So welcome to Brent and Eric Hildreth. They own Hilcon here around the lake in Mooresville. And my name's David Dowdy. I own Action Coach Lake Norman, a business education and coaching company. And guys, thrilled to have you on today. Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about Hilcon as we get into the business spotlight today.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go first. I'm Brent Hildreth. Eric and I are brothers. I'm the oldest. He's the youngest. Hilcon is, we've been around for 5 years now, actually coming up on our anniversary date here in the next few days. We are primarily a commercial concrete construction company. We dabble in a little bit of residential. We also have a little division that installs conduit, utilities, electrical conduit for some multifamily project builders that we partner up with. Our primary focus work area is we kind of stay around Charlotte, within call it 60 miles of Charlotte, kind of a loop there. But yeah, been here forever. We were both born and raised in Charlotte. Well, born in Charlotte, raised mostly in Mooresville, North Carolina. I still live in Mooresville myself. Eric lives a couple towns over in Newton. Enjoy the area, watching it grow. Sometimes enjoy watching it grow. Sometimes we wish it would take a step back. But hey, the growth is what feeds us, right? It's income for us. So we're just rolling with the punches.
Yeah. Yeah, that path 150 and 16 isn't quite as much fun as it used to be.
No.
Newton.
Absolutely not.
Good deal. Good deal. Thrilled to have you on there. I'm excited to hear what you've got to share. Your own experiences as you've gotten into business. You shared with me offline that you're the sons of another entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And so you grew up in it. So based on what you know now, if you guys had to start all over again, what might you do differently, knowing what you know now?
That's a good question. I think knowing what I know now, I think we probably would have seeked out a little more advice earlier on. We had some mentors and people that we reached out to. But I think a lot of times, for whatever reason, we don't want to ask the questions of how we do this or what you see with that. I think there's a lot of people who are willing to help, especially a new company who's willing to help you out if you'll just ask. And if they're not, find somebody else to ask. And I think a lot of people, miss the mark there, including ourselves. We've recently actually hired a business coach, and that's been tremendously helpful. But just taking the time to ask questions to other business owners, even if they're not in your industry, you can still learn a lot from their trials and tribulations.
Yep, absolutely. Brent, you got anything else to add?
No, well, I'll kind of echo that. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right? So a lot of people, like most small bit or any business for that matter, at least in the trades, which is where we're from, we're blue collar guys. You're good at what you do with your hands and your feet and your tools and your trucks and all the above. It's a different animal to running a business. You can do those things and execute and be just the cream of the crop professional when it comes to installing the work. Wow, you don't know what you don't know when it comes to business. And so we felt like we had all the avenues covered. And I mean, we're constantly, every day, Eric and I were sitting down talking probably, I don't know, another 30 minutes prior to this, and going through some 2024 stuff, some execution, some action items that we'd like to take care of. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, reflecting back to where we started, and we're talking about things that never crossed our minds, 5 years ago when you're starting. And I think it all comes in sequence. There's a rhyme and a reason to it. But the biggest takeaway is, kind of when you go out on your own, and kind of you mentioned it before we started, that a lot of people, it's very, you feel alone. It's lonely. You know, when you're working for someone under, we'll call it a W-2 job, you know, where somebody pays you, have an employer, especially mentally, you're allowed to kind of turn it off when you go home, right? You know, your time to your employer is your time to the employer, and then when you go home, that's separate. That is a big challenge as a business owner, because you can't just turn it off. You can't.
24/7 now.
Yeah, you can't. So be prepared for that. You know, that'd be my best advice, and that's the one thing that at least I wasn't aware of before we started. But yeah, it's a constant. So you have to really create a plan to I don't know, maintain your own sanity most times.
Yeah. And those are, I mean, that's gold right there in seeking out mentors or advice of others. And what I found is most business owners, well, there's a lot that they're more than willing to help if you're genuine in the way that you ask. They want to see people succeed. So it's all good. So any other learnings or, you know, that may come to mind now from the early days, some things that you wish you had known before that you might can share with somebody else that's kind of coming out of the gates, building their business?
Well, I don't know about, I know in our industry, the pay terms have definitely been a challenge. You know, most of the work we do, the commercial work, a little different than the residential. Most of our terms are net 30. You know, a lot of times by the time it gets processed and hung up between the owner and the contractor, you know, we're lucky if we see net 45. That's just kind of the world we live in. And so that can definitely be a challenge, you know, because essentially we're, depending on how you look at it, we're kind of funding the project, you know, until that comes in. So that's definitely something early on. I don't know that we necessarily anticipated that it would be that way. And it can also, you know, put a lot of strain on you, you know, business wise to be able to operate, you know, in that capacity.
And those financial strains in business also carry over into the family as well, unfortunately.
It can, yeah,
They
absolutely. Cash flow 101, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's understanding your cash flow, you know, basically as best you can. Like Eric said, we always get a curveball all the time.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you've had a pretty good run at it, it sounds like, over the recent 5 years. What do you attribute your growth to? More than just luck?
I tell you, you know, kind of, you know, when we first met, I don't know, it may have been prior to the recording. I think a lot of it, I'll call it being stubborn. It's knowing to give it. You think you've given it all you got, you know, and you just take that additional step to push forward because you have to grow. I mean, you have to. It's the old saying: if you're not growing, you're dying, right? If you're not growing on the vine, you're dying on the vine. So you always have to make a decision. And so that's the thing. Keep moving, just like the linebacker in the football game. You know, when he gets the ball, keep moving. You got to keep moving. So I think it's you don't know what the path is going to be. You know, plan A never works out. It's usually plan B or C. But I think that growth kind of it just happens. It morphs itself into something. You can plant a garden every year, and one crop may do better than another. Who knows why? But you just that's growing. You got to be willing to constantly, you know, you kind of reinvent yourself and be willing to grow. Has a lot to do with it while hanging on to your, you know, your core values.
Yeah, and just keep moving. I like it.
Keep moving. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think along with that growth mindset, you know, it's definitely on the personal side as well. They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
With the business. One thing I would say too, and we've been pretty fortunate to have some great vendors to work with, and I would suggest that to anybody. It's not always the first or second or even third, you know, vendor, but when you do pair up, you know, with some good vendors, they really help you succeed and kind of, you know, along the ride with us, you know.
Excellent. Hey, you guys being brothers,
Mhm.
and not sure if you've got other family in the business or if you've got your own families or not, but that balance of the work and the balance of your personal life and your own personal interests and things. How do you manage that in your own lives and still keep the business moving forward and growing?
You have
Well,
to really pay attention, I guess is the best word. Being self-employed, it's it's one day, one week, one month to the next. I mean, you may have some high stress, some weeks that they're fighting through some things, and other days it's on cruise control. You got to understand to take the time when you need to take the time. Also understand that when things are going great, appreciate it, but be prepared. There's another valley coming that
Yeah.
you got to work and you got to fight through. And also understand that when you're in that valley, that man, it was just last week or last month or last year that you were on a high, So just you really have to become accustomed to the roller coaster ride. And really, at least for me, it's trying to iron out, some of those peaks and valleys as best you can, but it's you really have to try to find that balance as best you can. It's going to bleed over, even if you don't talk about work with your family or your spouse. You do carry those emotions, so it's kind of like Eric mentioned earlier. Through growth in the business, you also have to grow personally. You have to grow as a person, and part of that is emotional intelligence. You have to understand that this is why you feel the way you feel. And I can go off into the whole big psychology side of things, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, pick up books, read books, of your choice. Eric and I have become, I guess we'll call avid readers. I mean, we swap books back and forth, and I've read more books in the past 5 years since we've been in business than probably in my
Yeah.
previous life.
Yep.
And so that's one takeaway is you're constantly learning and growing, constantly learning. So just feed yourself with some good substance. That does helps a lot tremendously when you're reading. Um, it could be self-help books, business books, or it could just be just somewhere to let your mind escape. You have to have that
Right.
downtime.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said before, that law of you're either growing or you're dying.
Yeah.
And so that growing yourself as well. So Eric, did you sound like you had something to?
yeah, I mean, I think along with that, it's just having those priorities in place. It's kind of like that old adage go. I think it's something along the lines, your kids don't care how much money you make.
Yeah.
That's very true. So like Brent said, it can be real hard at times, but to try and separate your personal life from your business, and,
Mhm.
and kind of know that they, in a lot of ways, they are two different things.
Mhm.
And prioritizing that your family first is kind of the way we've always done it. I know Brent and I both kind of take pride in very rarely missing a game or a practice or anything like that. And I mean, sometimes it's tough, but you got to shut it off and just that's your priorities, and
Yep.
you got to keep them in line.
Decide ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's that's great. That's great. All right. So in the concrete business, surely you're working with a number of different people. What are some of the qualities that you're looking for when you're looking at either employees or maybe you use some subcontractors to help? Um, what what are some things that stand out that you're really looking to identify in these individuals that are going to come and work with you?
Yeah, we just, like I mentioned, Eric and I, we were just talking about this half an hour ago with in some stuff. I mean, it starts with you like to try to find someone who is a clone of yourself, right? They think like you, they act like you, they view the world like you. And I can agree with that sentiment to a certain extent. Um, but really, from us, Eric and I, we were cut from our parents, both were just hard workers at the end of the day, probably to a fault, honestly. Um, just go to work, get it done. And so I know Eric and I kind of believe in that philosophy, kind of like keep moving. It's kind of like keep working. Things figure themselves out, keep working. So we like to partner up with people who are just good workers, good people, good workers. Um, I believe the other things they'll figure themselves out.
Hmm.
Really, they will. If someone's willing to learn, I like to always say the work that we do is not complicated. People just they're blown away, and they get so stressed out about what we do. People make it complicated. It's really not that complicated. I mean, you can boil anything in life. It's pretty simple. People make it complicated. So it's being able to partner up with someone who understands, you know, the good times, the bad times, and all the above, and come up with a plan. Let's just keep working, keep working.
Yeah,
Love
and I
it.
think just that good attitude, just that
Mhm.
overall good attitude, you know, it goes a long ways. Aside from, you don't necessarily need the skill set that can be taught. You know, you can
Right.
definitely learn that, but just that eagerness to go to work and to learn, and just that good attitude, the good outlook on what you're going to do. You know, we still, I don't care what size the job is, it still excites us. You know, when we land a new job, it's just that kind of, you get excited and you want to go to work.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, so um, if you had some words of wisdom, a nugget or two you want to share with people that might be thinking about going into the business for themselves or continuing on the fight, um, what would you share?
Me, at least me personally, one thing that I've had to come to terms with is don't be afraid to admit that you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. There's people, I was talking with our accountant yesterday, the CPA. I know squat about accounting. I know enough to get it put in so he can kind of clean the mess up in the background, but that's not what I'm here to do. And so again, we could talk about books. There's one that I'm reading now. It's not the what, it's the who. And sometimes you're not Superman or Superwoman. You can't do it all, especially if you grow to something with some sort of size or significance. You can't do it all. You just possibly can't do it all. So it's being able to take a step back and say, I'm not good at accounting or project management or human resources, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Find someone who is. Find someone who loves to do it, who's excited to do it. Figure out a way to fit that in and get them compensated. Then you pursue what you're good at, what you want to pursue. Now you still have to do the things you don't want to do, and you got to make the phone calls you don't want to make. But it's, again, just boiling it all down is recognize who you are and what you excel at, and understand where you need help. And don't be afraid to ask for help. That's what people do. That's what we do.
I think I like that question. I think I would suggest, don't be afraid of failure. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes and continue to make them. We've made plenty of mistakes along the way, and I'm sure we're gonna keep making bigger ones. You know, you try to minimize them, but somewhere in society, I guess it people frown upon failure, but that really is what you learn, or where you learn the most. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of look at it as a lesson learned versus a failure, you know, you're going to have a lot more successes, I think, along the way. So don't be afraid to fail. You know, if you're not taking that risk, then you're not doing anything. You
Yeah.
know, and it's real easy for people to say, "Oh, I would have done this. Oh, I would have done that," but more than likely they're not in your position, and they're not taking that risk, and
Right.
they're not the entrepreneur. Um,
What's the
so
lesson?
don't view failure as a bad thing, I guess,
Right.
would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Find the gold in it, find the lesson, and
Mm-hmm.
be able to move forward. Well,
I,
that's
I'll take
fantastic.
I'll take
Yeah.
our failures any day over our what ifs.
Mm,
Right.
yeah. Well, Brent and Eric, I appreciate you guys being on the call. So if somebody wants to reach out to you for whatever reason, what's the best way to reach you two over at Hilcon?
Probably shoot us a direct line through an email. You can get me. That's Brent, Brent, at Hilcon LLC. That's Hilcon LLC.com.
Fantastic. Brent, Eric Hildreth at Hilcon right here in Mooresville. And Newton, Eric,
Yep.
appreciate you guys being on the call today and sharing all of your experiences or at least some of your experiences and wisdom here that you've picked up with Hilcon. So I look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having us,
You.
Dave.